Hello and welcome to Ticket Manager's All Access interview series, engaging leaders from across the sports marketing spectrum to identify and explore critical issues in the business of sports, entertainment, sponsorship, activation, ticketing, hospitality, and more. I'm your host, Jim Andrews. Joining me on this episode to discuss the emergence of virtual events, sponsorship make goods, and other aspects of the brand partnership value equation is Nick Carey, Senior Vice President and Head of Sponsorships and Brand Engagement for Wells Fargo. Welcome, Nick, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Looking forward to the conversation.
As am I. Obviously, in a lot of these conversations, and I think probably all of our conversations these days, talking about what 2020 has meant, and one of the developments that have come out of this year, it's clear that virtual events, when done right, can really be a valuable asset to sponsors. And you had some success with virtual events at Wells Fargo this past year. Can you share some of the lessons that you all learned?
It's funny to be here in November, kind of looking back at what feels like a lifetime ago in February and March, and kind of all the things we've learned, and how, to your point, born of necessity, have to look at new ways of engaging fans and customers and consumers in general. I think one of the lessons we've learned is, like probably a lot of brand side marketers, is just the need to be nimble, creative, and innovative. And, if a lot of companies were like that already, and for those that weren't, you learned how to do it quickly. So, in addition to the lessons we learned, the thing that I think was, the silver lining of this is just the opportunity to try new things. There are digital technologies, there are platforms, there are virtual events like we're going to talk about that in the past, I'll be honest, were maybe a little bit harder to sell just because, you didn't need them as much. Whereas the pandemic has really forced us into needing those things. Some of the things we did, I mentioned virtual events, right? With our partnership we have with AEG at Staples Center and with the LA Kings and some of the properties in LA, we really shifted into some of the virtual events that they were offering. One great example that I love from just last month was the Lexus All-Star Chef Classic, which, in prior years was held at the Staples Center with probably, 15,000 people there for sort of an all-star chef event where they had top chefs coming in, teaching people how to cook. Having to shift all of that online was something we thought was really interesting because it was a way that we could engage with local LA customers on our side and bring a really cool experience into their homes. And again, with AEG, what they did was essentially sent prepackaged meals to our customers, our guests, but also to other people that were involved in this bigger event, to their homes in the greater LA area. So you receive a package at home, and then the next day you log in and the chef is there in a virtual environment teaching you how to cook it. But you're there with something that's sensory and something you can physically touch and taste, obviously. So I think that's just a really neat way to do a virtual event differently and think about experiential in a different way. And some other things we've done that are maybe more in the core sports space was we do a lot of player meet and greets with various teams we sponsor. So the Mexican national team, for example, we've been a proud sponsor of theirs for many years now. And their US tour and their global match tour is very disruptive, but they are back and they are playing matches internationally. So we've actually done 4 meet and greets, post-game meet and greets with Mexican national team players and fans after the games, except it's like this, it's virtual. And so people watch the game and then log in and you have a player post-game doing a kind of a Zoom interactive with fans. So, not quite the same as being there, sort of in the locker room or in a room at the stadium afterwards. But to be honest, some of these events, we were never going to have people in Mexico City or in, Japan or wherever else they may be playing. So anyway, some interesting things there that I think we certainly have learned from, certainly have allowed us to continue to be relevant for fans and for our customers. But then also are going to be things that we probably adopt going forward that have become part of the new normal for how we engage with people in a sort of blended world. It's not going to stay virtual forever. The physical experiential will come back. I think we're all confident in that. Definitely some encouraging vaccine news today. But, the ability to scale what we do through virtual is certainly something that we've learned from and that will carry forward.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense that we don't have to put all of these things away just because 2020 will end. And of course, we're all excited to get back to live events, but there is value in those virtual engagements, and it opens up opportunities that didn't exist before because space limitations or other geographic limitations don't exist in the virtual world.
Yep. Yeah. And especially needing to be nimble right now with scheduling too, right? Because some of these events across all sports, it's things are scheduled and things are canceled because of a COVID test, right? So to have people at home doing things virtually, obviously breeds a lot more flexibility.
Well, and part of that kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about next, that flexibility and getting creative. That requires a good partner when we're talking about sponsorships and brand partnerships. And certainly when you talk about things like canceled events and canceled seasons, live audience restrictions, all of that, the traditional sponsorship assets that were part of agreements really just kind of evaporated in some cases. So then that conversation had to be had about, well, how is there a way to provide make goods or somehow restore some of that value? And those were kind of unanticipated conversations, I think, for a lot of us when contracts were signed. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those discussions and what those were like from your sponsor perspective?
Like I said, before in March, everything stopped, and I think all of us took a period to kind of regroup and see what was going on. Non-lawyers got very good at understanding force majeure clauses. I think for the way I guided our team to approach this, that I think has served us well long term, is just the sponsorships that we have. They're things we've had for a long time. They're relationships we've built. Realizing that we're all going through this together, sort of the first approach is really just to be a partner and be empathetic, frankly, to our properties relationships. We're all doing the best we can. So kind of having some flexibility, affording them some time while people figured things out was sort of that first period we went through, kind of in the spring and summer. And, some things were not impacted, to be honest. I mean, a lot of our college sports, certainly the spring sports were impacted, but we kind of come through the end of the college basketball season. So that was less impacted than maybe our PGA Tour event, which was in May, which was canceled. So I think that there's affording people a lot of time. Ultimately, though, we were never looking for a refund. Rather, it was about kind of having an equitable re-expression of the value is one way to think about it. Really shifting, it was understood we're not going to be able to use tickets. We're not going to have as much value for things that are experiential in nature because fans were not able to go or the event wasn't even taking place. Yet there's still ways we could get value from the sponsorships that we had, short of, again, of asking for a refund, which is sort of a line we didn't want to cross, just, again, in the interest of being a partner within the industry. So the shift from tickets to more TV visible signage, from fan experiences to digital content and social media posts, the virtual experiences we talked about, all of those things were essentially make goods for other areas of the contract and benefits that couldn't be delivered. So again, as I said before, an opportunity to try new things. And, I think the one thing I would say is that we expected first look as these things came forward, right? There were properties and rights holders that I think maybe reacted some better than others to this. You saw how well the NBA responded with the bubble and MLS with the MLS's back tournament. I think there were groups that sort of, okay, we're going to do this. Here's what we're going to learn. Here's how we're going to lead into this and really do it right, or at least try really hard. And there were others that were sort of sitting back and sort of waiting to see what happened. I think those folks that really try to push forward and proactively reached out to us and said, hey, look, we know we can't deliver X, but we have Y. And, we might not agree on what Y is, but, it's Y or Z, and we would figure out what that equitable value exchange was, to the point where I think we're now coming up on the end of the year. And for the most part, we're feeling like, value is made whole. It's going to impact renewals. It's going to impact the types of assets that we will be able to purchase going forward, right? If there are going to be fans in the stands for some foreseeable, period of time, well, we're not going to buy those tickets. And so let's talk about what we can get and what will kind of allow us to accomplish that objective just through maybe a virtual or maybe more content-driven approach.
And I think that whole conversation, and it sounds like from a rights holder perspective, Wells Fargo would be a great partner to have because you have that kind of empathy and understanding about, hey, let's look at what's happening to our partners and be empathetic. But I think also there's always been a conversation to be had about kind of a gap between rights holders and sponsors in terms of kind of priorities and what's important. And you talk a little bit about that in terms of from the brand's perspective, what what makes a good partner? I mean, you mentioned some things already in terms of bringing things to existing partners first and making sure that's a priority. But are there others?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there is a gap. I think the gap has narrowed during the course of my career. I think what I've seen, if anything, is the gap narrowing because both sides of the table essentially are working with very similar data sets. You have agencies and evaluative entities helping both the seller and the buyer. And so the delta is getting slimmer. There's not like a lot of hot deals out there, I guess. Now, right now, I think rights holders are doing a fair job given what they're up against, right? And again, we try to approach this with some empathy and some understanding. However, there is a gap because there are still a lot of uncertainty around scheduling of upcoming seasons or events, the unknown around attendance and whether people could be able to go to events. So, it's not going to be a situation where we just sort of buy what we bought before or spend what we spent before when, frankly, there's a huge unknown around the property or the rights holder's ability to deliver on those benefits. So those are, I'll be honest, those are active conversations that we're having to have with a lot of our properties to kind of figure out what does that look like now. And it's very hard to get a long-term deal done right now when you're building a multi-year contract that would have assets that were really valuable and relevant in 2019, but due to the reality of where we are with the pandemic, it can't be offered. So I think that the team's ability to deliver new experiences at the scale of the value that we had with more traditional experiential assets, there's still some work to be done there. But I also get it. I mean, I really do understand that properties rights holders have had a very hard year and that there's pressure on revenue. I mean, I think there was an article today on ESPN about the Golden State Warriors and how they were slated to lose several $100 million if they can't have fans at their venue. And so, there's pressure. And I don't know that you can just replace that with social content and digital content for your sponsors either.
Would it be fair to say that for properties that in terms of managing expectations that, at least for the next year, their sponsors are probably looking at not wanting to go too long term with contracts, maybe doing something, year by year to see how things are going?
I can't speak to the broader industry, but I mean, I think for a category like financial services, where ultimately we are in a relationship business with our customers and experiential and hospitality are important for us. For some other industries, it's a buyer's market, because if you just can buy a lot of content and access and it's all media driven, then that's a different kind of KPI and objective. We do value that as well, but we're kind of maybe more multifaceted in the type of benefits we traditionally would buy. We're also dealing with an economy that is recovering from the effects of the pandemic too. So corporate budgets, I have to imagine, are under pressure across the board. And again, with the uncertainty that lies ahead, I would understand if brands were not able to do a big multi-year contract.
Yeah,
we will recover. I mean, look, I remain very optimistic. Not least of which because of the encouraging vaccine news this week, but also sports and consumer passion points around entertainment or music or whatever it might be. Those are not going to go away.
That's excellent, and I think it was a great reminder too that there's no one size fits all conversation here, right? It's going to you're not going to have the same conversation with Wells Fargo that you are with Anheuser-Busch or with Toyota. Everybody's in a little bit of a different place with different objectives and different priorities. So
yeah, and it's breeding disruption too. I mean, I think the one sort of buzzword comment is that the pandemic has accelerated trends that were maybe 5 years out to right now, and so you're seeing a lot of those emerging technologies and maybe even startup companies who are under a lot of demand for what they're offering because they are enabling either a safe venue experience or a more seamless virtual experience or some other way to engage with their players and teams that they love.
Yeah, anytime we can expand that universe and deepen the pool, if you will, can only mean good things, I think, in the long run. Nick, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. You've given us a lot to think about, especially as we're all kind of planning for what's ahead in 2021, as much as we can plan these days. But just want to thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Jim. I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And on behalf of everyone at Ticketmanager, thank all of you for watching, and please join us again for the next episode in our All Access interview series.